Hi, everybody. Rachelle Jones, Grief Recovery. So, today, this concept's been coming up in my classes this week. So, sharing it with you because it's part of the conflict that happens when we go through a change of some kind. So, the concept is well, first of all, grief. Grief is the conflicting emotions that you can have bubble up with change. It's not something you decide to happen. It just naturally does. And that's called grief. Okay. You feel it, it's there. You can't stop it in its tracks. It doesn't operate that way. Guess I could turn my little heater off here. So it's the conflicting emotions that bubble up with change, conflicting. Well, partly in this society, uh, we had already talked before how we were born telling the truth. What is that? I think that's the video called Intuition. So you could look that up on wherever you're listening to this, look on that page, my page, and you'll find the video about trusting your intuition. So at the point of that is, though, that we are all born telling the truth. The sweet stuff, a baby will laugh and giggle like nobody's business. It's absolute music to our ears usually, and then they will cry also like nobody's business when they sense something isn't right, something isn't comfortable, something isn't just how they want to be. So we start off telling the truth, and then we go through different experiences in our life, and we start to learn that only some of our truth is wanted. And it's usually the sweet side. So only usually the sweet side of our truth, emotional truth, will be accepted in life. And we go through a lot of different experiences in that way. So the reason I come to you today is because a lot of times, I mean, it's not going to take you long I was looking for a journal maybe a year ago for maybe a gift, I don't know. And I was looking for a journal on, I think it was on Amazon. Actually, I'd been to Barnes and Noble, Amazon, all kinds of places. And the journal prompts always seem to have, or very frequently, I have a hiccups all of a sudden, seem to have something that said, like prompts for joy, prompts for positive thinking, prompts for silver linings. And so that all sort of reinforces the message that only our joyful, exciting, positive feelings and emotions are to be acknowledged. And the trouble with that is we aren't purely joyful, excited, feeling positive all the time. It's not real life. Humans are not designed that way. We're not designed to only laugh. We actually have been designed to be able to cry as well. And then there's a whole host of feelings and emotions we could have within those two walls. So, but if we are raised in a society, which you can look anywhere very quickly to find that message reinforced, that only positivity, silver lining, joyful things are to be focused on. Now, I do get it. We don't want to, there's a fear that we'll get lost in sour thoughts and we'll be dragged down. The thing is, we're going to be dragged down anyway, whether we acknowledge it. And then we're like, clawing and if you imagine the heavy emotion like rocks and weight that is strapped to you, it's part of you, so it's not going anywhere until we take correct and really effective action to help you release some of those rocks. The memories will still be there, just the heaviness of the memories will not be. But if we are only focusing on the positive, we're just clawing and swimming uphill against the tide with a bunch of rocks tied to us. And part of the reason those rocks and the heavy parts get stuck to us is because we don't pay attention to them. And then we have a ton of reinforcement throughout our entire life that tells us we shouldn't be paying attention to them. And then it becomes afraid, a fear of paying attention to them because we're told we're not supposed to. We don't want to risk being approved of. And we don't know what to do with the heaviness when we start acknowledging the rocks. So it's easier to just not focus on any of it. But please hear me say, your rocks aren't going anywhere until you take correct and specific action to release the rocks. Again, you'll keep the memories, but lose the weight of them, the painful, heavy weightedness of them. And that's what we want to be able to focus on. And so part of our work in a class, in a grief recovery method class, is to teach you how to find what rocks you're carrying while you're swimming through life, because it's a whole lot more joyful to swim through life. It's empowering to know how to acknowledge the rocks that you're carrying, the heavy parts of life, and then how to release them, because they are affecting your life. They're affecting your motion. They're affecting your energy to be able to swim through life. They're affecting your concentration on your stroke, if we imagine life to be swimming, we're trying to swim through. And if we have a bunch of rocks connected to us, you can just imagine how that's going to affect your concentration, your energy, sometimes your reactability. Instead of having responses, maybe you have reactions. That's just really going to affect your sleep, everything. And then you start to get sore spots, hot spots inside of your body that turn into health issues because your body is not made to carry rocks all the time. And all the old ones, you've been accumulating rocks your whole life from every moment you wish could have been different, could have been a little better, every moment you wish you had more of that you're not going to. These all start to accumulate rocks from the past, and then what you're not going to do or say or experience going forward. So these all accumulate to be rocks, heavy grief rocks, okay? So part of your job before you even come to class, part of your life, part of your existence is to acknowledge both parts. The joyful, sunshiny rainbow stuff, the sad, sour, heavy, pain-filled stuff as well. Part of that is we need to have someone be able to hear our rocks, and a lot of times society doesn't. They reinforce the need to stay positive, just don't think about it, just keep going, you're strong now. All of those are misinformation or myths. So part of it is to pay attention to the rocks. So what do I mean? Somebody dies. You can feel both. This is the complexity of the human brain, the human heart, the human experience is very complex. Don't cheapen yourself by only focusing on one thing. And sometimes you can only see one right now, but you might also have multiple thoughts, feelings, emotions. So let's just say, for example, someone dies. You're okay. You're allowed to feel sad for all the reasons, any reason that someone died. A pet died. You're allowed to feel sad for any reason. Did you know, though, very, very often, we can also feel a bit of gladness, relief. If someone's been suffering for a long time, you may feel a little bit of relief that they're no longer suffering. If someone, let's say, I worked with someone earlier, their friend died from another country. That country's currently in war. They died just before, somewhere right around the beginning of that war starting. It's okay to feel a little bit of gladness or relief that they're not here to witness that war going on in their country. As well as absolute sadness and devastation that the person has died and they're no longer here. You can feel both. Even if you're getting a divorce, you may feel relieved to go off without some of the pain in your relationship that you have been living with and experiencing. You may have chosen that. you're also able to feel very, very sad and scared for the loss of hopes, dreams, and expectations that you had built together that now are not going to be experienced the same way. Graduation, children are graduating right now from high school, college, moving up from middle school or elementary school or preschool into the next, moving out of college into career field. You're allowed to feel so happy and joyful about that part, the achievement, the work that's completed, relieved, excited, looking forward to the future with a little bit of a joyfulness there, while also feeling very sad to lose friends, to lose familiarity. Maybe your child's moving. We don't know. You're allowed to feel both. And I want you to hear today that it's really important that you give yourself permission to acknowledge both. Maybe you try to express it to the people around you, and maybe they hear you and just, hey, thanks for sharing, respond in a way that lets you feel heard. Oftentimes they don't. They jump into advice, analysis, fixings, and then you don't feel heard. If they just want to force you into the positive silver lining type thought, the joyful only type thinking, that's not going to be helpful. The rocks are still connected to you. So the number one way to begin dealing with the heaviness of grief and emotion, the rocks that you're carrying through life, by the way, they don't go away. They just keep building up until we do something correct and effective to help release them. Again, you preserve your memories. You just lose the weight of some of those painful memories, the rocky ones. So, number one, recognize that it's happening, that you have emotion in both directions. Find someone safe to express it with. And if you don't have one, come to my class. That's what I do. Excuse me. Number three, start to be aware of the only way to really releasing the rocks and to feel a less intense effect is to start acknowledging that the rocks exist. You've got to say it out loud. You cannot live in positive, silver lining, joy, happy all the time. I wish you could. I wish that was the human experience. I don't have the power to make that happen. I believe sometimes there's a reason that I can't. There's a reason that I'm not God. I believe that all the time, actually. But the point is, we have to acknowledge the fullness of our human experience, not only the positive. And if there's something drawing you to only focus on the positive, I would ask you to consider pausing and evaluating where that teaching came from. Who taught you that you should only focus on the positive and the joy? Where do you first remember learning that message, experiencing that teaching? Where did that come from? Why did you decide it was correct? Why did you hold on to it? Why did you keep operating in that way? A lot of time, we keep operating in that way because, well, that's what seems to be received in society. But guess what? Society's got it wrong when it comes to grief and emotion. They just do. And that's how we know this method works every time we apply it. I've never seen it not work as long as it's applied, and it's applied in the order and in the way that you're taught. You can't skip steps, you can't cut corners, and it does work. That's what evidence-based means. It means that we know if you do A and then B and then C and then D in this order, in this way, you will find a measure of relief and recovery. The intensity of that, I can't be always certain what that will look like for you. There's no way for me to know that. We just arrive there. And then you start telling me. People usually start telling me as we go through the class, different awarenesses and excitements, sense of relief that they experience as we go through the class, even before we've made it to the completion of the class. So step number one, be aware that you've got feelings of both sweet and sour. Step number two, consider saying it out loud. And if you aren't heard, then get to some place you can be heard. Okay. And just don't minimize yourself. Don't cut yourself in half. You're way too beautiful and complex for that. It's not healthy. Um, there is a safe and healthy way to walk through, an effective way to walk through the sour parts of life that are building up and accumulating and stealing your current moments of joy, happiness, gladness. It shouldn't be a claw through experience. Maybe for a moment, for a beat, for a time, but you shouldn't live there, because that's just really going to steal parts of your life that I know are valuable and important. So if you find that that is where you're living, in the I'm just clawing my way through, and it's lasted for longer than a beat, a measure, a sip of time, perhaps that's when you decide, hey, I don't actually like living this way anymore. It's too hard. It's too challenging. I'm getting worn out. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. Let me know. I'd love to take you through a class, either a one-on-one, I do that in 8 weeks, or a 2-day class, 2.5 day. I have some of those scheduled you can look into, or just let me know and I can point you in the direction for those classes. So for today, that was a big one that came up. I hope that's helpful. Let me know if you have questions, thoughts, or wonders that bubble up about that, or if you notice a fear that is holding you back and preventing you from acknowledging the fullness of an experience. Somebody tells you you're wrong or you shouldn't do that, or, you know, just think about all the good things. Think about all the good times you had. Unfortunately, your heart remembers both, and your heart bears the burden of the stuff you don't acknowledge. So let's not let yourself start being burdened and buried by these physical health effects of not paying attention to the sour parts of your experiencing that you're secretly carrying. All right. I love y'all, and I will talk with you next time. Bye, everybody.